Hello and welcome to another Digital Photo Mentor live photo editing demonstration here on our channel. I'm Darlene and I am a photography instructor. I've been a photographer for over 30 years and my specialty on this channel is photo editing. So I'm going to be demonstrating using Lightroom and Luminar today from images that were submitted by followers and subscribers. So if you would like to play along next week, I'll be giving the theme for next week. This week we're doing bird photos. So we're going to try and change it up a little bit and do themes each week. You can just use this link right here to submit your images. So I've got lots of great images this week. Tell me where you're from, and if you're joining in for the first time in the chat, I'm going to hop over to Lightroom to start so that we can see the images, and I'll be right back. All right, let me get into the bird category here. There we go. And I see we've got lots of regulars already here. Danelle, did you recognize your photo? We actually used this one on the little featured image for this video because I thought it was a great image and it was really colorful. So I think, tell me what kind of bird this is. It looks like a scoop. Is it a flamingo? I'm guessing because it's pink and you're in Florida. So I'm hoping you're not in the path of the new hurricane that's coming that your way. Brandon, greetings from Calgary. Reg, have you joined us before, Reg, from London, Ontario? Holly, my faithful student, yes, you are. Marguerite from Ontario, light snow. Well, it's actually +1 here in Edmonton today, so we have a nice weekend coming up. Rob is saying hi from a remote location. He's off to meet our farmer to get some eggs and meat, and he'll be back shortly. So he's literally running around so that he could get back here. Zay, I think I have some of your images as well. A Roseate Spoonbill. Yes, I could tell from the beak a spoonbill, but I thought somehow it was a flamingo. I'm going to have to look up that. I'm going to have to look that up. Julia said the same thing. All right. And Rob says he wants to know what kind of bird. So there you go, Rob. Roseate Spoonbill. You're going to have to Google that. So I'm going to get started. I've got a bunch of great bird images here, and I've kind of categorized them or grouped them together. Don't be alarmed if your image has 1 star. I just did that so I could sort them in order. So it just means that I'm going to be doing that one first. That's all that means. All right. So I've got a couple of images here of birds against the water. Then I've got birds against greenery. I've got some high contrast ones. And then I've got some where the background is blurred out. So I want to sort of take these in 4 categories and see if I can get these all done. And nice to have you back, AJ. As you can see, your image is first up with Debs. So I'm going to work on this one of Debs first. And you had both indicated that you preferred Lightroom, so that's what we're going to use. And I've also got Luminar open, and this is the new version. And it's interesting because I had to reinstall Luminar right before we started this because I had a beta version, and the new sharpening, the new super sharp, the demo version that I had the 3 modes, and the version that they shipped only has motion blur. So I was getting a lot of questions about that as to where are the other options. There's no pull down menu here. Sorry, I'm trying not to sneeze. Apparently they've only shipped it with the motion blur. Let me turn on my little cursor highlighter here. So you won't have a pull down menu yet. From my understanding, they're going to add those in the next update. So I'm not sure why they shipped it that way, but what you saw in my video of the one that I did yesterday, if you watched that one, which is the overview of the new extensions plus the other ones, I'm going to get a link for you and put that in the chat. If you want to watch that one, I went over all 6 of the extensions for Luminar Neo, and I did show that one. So if you saw that one where I had the pull down menu and you can't find it, that's why. Okay, so it is coming. So Danelle says about the spoonbill. They make nests in March, babies come in April. The lorries around the eyes become brilliant greenish in mating season. Interesting. Okay, learning lots about birds. All right, so I'm going to go back to Lightroom here and Deb's Eagle, and then I'm going to go on to do this one first. So what my idea is with categorizing these is I've talked in the past about being able to batch process your images. And right now I'm in the process of editing over 3,000 images that I took on a movie set. And I showed some of those a couple weeks ago to my Luminar class as a secret because we were doing a live, and I can share those publicly now. So if you're curious, and you stick around till the end if you want to see some of the movie set images, I'll show you that. And the batch processing system is what I've been using to process those in Lightroom. So I want to edit one, and then even though the next image is by a different person and it's not the same location of the same bird, I want to see if we can copy and paste those settings over. Okay, and we will do some in Luminar, the ones that are in blue, and we'll do some in Lightroom. Okay, so the first thing I always do is I look at the camera profile, okay? And whether that's, again, Luminar or Lightroom, okay? I'm going to try and kind of demonstrate both here if we can. So if you are in Luminar, you'll find that in the Develop Raw panel, and that's right here, okay? So you have to be in Develop Raw, and you can see the external profiles. Here are the camera profiles, okay? So you can see if I choose the landscape one, and the same thing applies here in Lightroom. Okay, so you'll find it here in Lightroom, the little 4 squares. Okay, so make sure you're under camera matching. You can also experiment with some of the others. I've played with artistic, modern, and then there's vintage down the bottom as well. So if you want a different look for your image, you can play with those profiles. Okay, those are only in Lightroom. If you want additional profiles in Luminar that are like that, you would have to download them from somewhere and install them. Okay. It's been requested that I do a video on that, so that may be something that I do in a future lesson. Now I'm going to go with neutral on this one because look at how high contrast it is. Right? There's hardly any detail in his body, and when I go with neutral, it's kind of a little bit flatter. Okay, can you see that? And I'm going to start with that one, or standard, one or the other. Standard's not bad either. Okay, let's try. I'm still going to go with neutral. I'm waffling, but I'm going to go with neutral. Okay. If you're curious, if you want to see Deb's exposure settings on this one, that was with a 300 millimeter lens. It's a Nikon file, f5.6 at 1/1600th. That's hard to say, of a second. 1/1600th of a second. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust the histogram a little bit because everything is sort of in the middle and to the dark side, which is the left. So I'm going to use my shift double click trick, which sets the white point. Okay, so see how it zapped that over to the right side of the graph here. So click on the word. So hold the shift key, double click on the word. Okay, so now I have what's called a black point and a white point. Okay, and if I hold down my Alt Option key and click on the sliders, you will see what's clipping. Okay, so I can see that there's a tiny bit of his head feathers clipping. So I'm going to bring the highlights down until I get rid of that spot. Okay, with the blacks, I actually want to clip a little bit more. With whites, you want to avoid clipping generally because you'll end up with a white blob. But if you have more blacks clipping, that's okay. And then it gives you more color as well. Okay. If you want a little more detail back, just use the shadow slider. Okay. But I'm going to leave this down again, and we're going to do that separately on his body. Okay, so I want to leave this area dark. And the next thing I want to do is crop it because he's right in the middle, right? So I'm going to use my keyboard shortcut, R, right? And don't ask me to go and find these things. Rob's going to be back soon, so hopefully he's going to go and find me some links. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to hit auto on the crop tool to see if it kind of straightens it. And there's not really anything that indicates crooked or straight. We could also go by sort of the edge of the water here if I want to make it straight based on that, and it didn't do anything. So it looks pretty straight. But the biggest thing I want to do is get him out of the middle, okay? And I totally understand why she's photographed him in the middle, because often when you're doing birds or moving subjects like this, I end up with a lot of pictures like this too of moving subjects where you want to give them some room to move and you don't know which way they're going to move or how fast. And also if your focusing spot or zone is in the middle, you end up with them in the middle of the picture. Okay. So doing a little cropping after the fact is okay. So I want to get rid of some of this foreground, because when there's such foreground in front of the subject like this, it makes him feel farther away. I love the fact that he's walking. It's kind of comedic. And I might come all the way up to the dark wood, but let's go there and see how that works. And I want to try and get him on this corner here. So I'm just going to go a little bit down there. Let's go about like that. Okay. So I'm trying to get rid of sort of all the tones here, but I like him in that third. There's too much water if I put it too low. Okay, so I'm trying to find a good balance of putting him in this lower third here, so he's got room to move in front of him. You always want room for your subject to move when they're facing a certain direction. Janelle made a good point here, as well as she allowed for sudden spreading of the wings. You don't want to lose the tips of the wing feathers. Exactly. Right. So when you're dealing with subjects like this with birds that could just take off and fly at any moment, you want to leave them some space. Right. So great example, Janelle. I'm going to add a little bit of clarity here, but not too much. Okay, because I want to go and do some selective adjustment on the bird. Okay, I'm going to add maybe a low edge vignette. Okay, so these are just presets from my preset pack. I'm going to use low, and then I'm just going to turn this off. I've actually created myself a preset that I'm using on, I mentioned the processing and the movie photos. I'm going to use a preset that I made, and I'll show you how easy it is to make this one. So what I did was I did lighten subject, darken background. Okay, and that is masking. So it's added 2 masks. Okay, so you see that? So I've automated the subject and brightened the subject. You can see I've added whites and exposure. And let's see what it found. Okay, so it found most of him, but it didn't find his tail. So that's interesting. And then background selects the opposite, and I've darkened the background ever so slightly and lowered the highlights. Okay, so that preset, excuse my sniffles, that preset is designed to make the subject pop a little bit more. Okay, so from here I can refine it though, because I want to get his tail. So I'm going to add, and I'm going to use the new object selection. I've got it set on, you can use the square marquee and draw around your object, or use the brush and paint around it. So I'm just going to draw a square around his tail, and Lightroom will find the edges of what it thinks you're trying to add. Okay, so now I've added that tail to the subject, but I also need to subtract it from the background. So I'm going to do the same thing on the background. Okay, so now if I turn off this overlay, and I'm just pressing O to get the overlay to show. Oh, see, it's picking something up over here, but I'm not too concerned about that rock. But let's see what it's doing. Okay, if I turn it off, okay, see the tones in the background and the bird are similar, and he stands out a bit more. So it's very subtle, right? But he stands out more. Now that I've got him selected, I'm actually going to zoom in on him, and I'm going to add some texture. Look what happens when we add texture. Right? Look at his feathers. Okay, so I'm going to add a bunch of texture. I want to make sure, oops, I'll do that. I want to make sure that I'm not clipping his, looks like my highlights have gone up again. So see, I'm clipping that bird. Okay, because I raised the whites on the bird, I don't think I want to do that. I want to make sure I keep his head details. So I'm going to lower the highlights, see that, until I get his feather details back again. Okay, so it's a balance. I'm increasing the exposure, right, which brightens up his feathers on his body, but it also brightens the white part. So I want to not go too far on either of those, because I don't want to clip his feathers on his head. Maybe lift the shadows a little bit. So I'm finding this balance. You see that? So a little bit of exposure, and then minus highlights, plus a little bit of shadows increased. Okay. And apparently I lost my texture. So I'm going to call this bird. And I'll give him some more texture. There we go. Maybe even a little bit of clarity. See that whites are going off the chart again. So I'm just going to bring the whites back down. Perfect. Look at that. Okay, so if I zoom out a little bit, turn off the clipping warnings. I'm just going to turn off this mask with the eyeball. So see what's happening with the bird. Look at how much he's jumping out. Okay, see that? And if I zoom out and look at the background, see how it's just darkening the background. I can also do the opposite with the background and lower the texture. Okay, see how it sort of makes the texture, the background blurry. Okay, or I could do another trick on that one. I'll show you another trick after. Now, if I'm happy with this, okay, I could save this as a preset. Okay, so I could save this as, you can literally just go over here into presets, right? And you have to click the plus, create new preset. Then you'd have to choose the settings that you want to save, right? I don't want to save everything. I just want the masking, okay? Because the settings for all the color and everything else might be different for a different image. I just want these masking. Okay, so I'm going to put it into the same folder, the same preset folder, and I'm going to call it Eagle, right? Just so I know that that's where that's what I use to create it, right? Oh, I forgot. I also want texture. Where am I at here? So I want texture and clarity as well, right? I want to make sure I grab those things. Actually, no, I don't. Okay, so here I'm almost made this mistake because if I choose texture and clarity, that's on the entire picture, right? This is on the masking. So I only want the masking. So I'm correcting myself. So now I've created this preset, which ends up down here. You can see it's called Eagle. Okay, can you see that? Right here. Oops. And let's see what else we want to do with him. All right, so that's looking pretty good. There's the before and after. Okay, I might want to do one more preset where I sort of minimize the background a little bit more. I want to darken this foreground, this sand. So I'm just going to use a linear gradient because it's straight across. And I'm going to do darken. And I'm also going to lower the texture and the clarity and maybe even the sharpness because I want this foreground to sort of just fade out of focus because it's grabbing too much attention. Okay. I'm just going to call this sand. You'll see the importance of naming your masks in a moment. Okay, so if I turn that off, see what that's doing. Okay, so now he really stands out. Now, if I want this sand incorporated as well, okay, I can do an add to this same mask. Now, what would be the best way to do it? I could try color range, right, and just select the sand, do a little box around the sand. Right, now it did select that sand, but it also selected the eagle and too much of the water. Okay, so that one's not, I'd have to do some more subtracting. So I'm going to undo that and I'm going to try a luminance range instead and see what I get. Okay, so similar, I'm getting the same kind of idea here with the luminance range, but can I refine it a little bit more using these tools here? Okay, so see how I don't want this part. I'm trying to get the sand, but not the darker tones. Something like that. I would still have to do a minus on the top part. Right? And I can just do a subtract, linear gradient. So see how these masks sort of add up? So to get these parts selected, right, I had to do select luminance range, adjust the luminance range, and then minus the linear gradient. Okay. I also want to make sure that I'm not getting the subject. So I'm just going to do select subject as well. Okay. So this one took 4 different things for me to get the sand selected. Okay. I mean, now I might have gone too far. Now you can see what's happening there. I'm getting to adjust my luminance range. There we go. That's a little better. You see how it was looking? See when you adjust this range, it's adjusting the sand, and you see the tones start shifting. Okay, so I wasn't getting a nice smooth gradation. So I want to make sure to get all the sand. There we go. See that? That's better. Okay, now I'm just going to back it off a little bit. Perfect. Okay, so see that? All right, now let's look at the before. So this is the full before and after. So our eagle is really singing now, okay? If we want to blur the water a little bit more, okay, we can choose background. Okay, so it's going to choose everything except the bird. And then I'm going to subtract another linear gradient because I just want the background from starting from about here. Okay, so I want to blur the water, and I'm going to just adjust it like so. Okay, so I'm going to lower the texture and the clarity. Clarity tends to make things fuzzy, so I don't use clarity all that much. I prefer to use minus sharpness and minus texture. Okay, I might even just, keep some highlights and shadows in there because I want to blur it. But if I darken it as well, you see I keep the peaks and the highlights of the water while still making it more out of focus. Okay, so I'm going to call that water, and you can see what that's doing on the water. Okay. All right, I think I'm happy with that. I love the fact that he's walking. So now that we have that, I can copy and paste. Okay. Deb's running late. No problem, Deb. I've got some of your images. And a question from Danelle. Is the mask density the same for the head and the body? It appears on my computer that the mask on the head and the tail feathers is lighter. I think it just looks that way because the green is over top of the white, Danelle. When it's the same thing as like when I pull the black slider, your colors get more saturated. Well, the overlay mask looks the same too, right? So it looks like the overlay mask is darker on his body because of the color behind it. I think it's an illusion. Okay. Hey, Kelly, good timing. We've got some of your images as well today. Okay, so now that I have this, I'm going to do a copy. Oops, I got to get over to Lightroom. I'm going to do a copy. And once again, I get to choose which things I want to copy. Okay, so I don't necessarily want to copy the cropping because the next image is going to be completely different. I am going to copy everything else, including the masking, but I'm going to choose which things I want to select. I don't want the sand because I don't think that's going to be an issue in the next one. So I'm going to choose the water, the background, and the bird. Now can you see the importance of naming your mask so that when you go to do either a preset or a copy or a sync, okay, now you know what's in that mask because you named it, okay? So I'm going to copy it. And then we're going to move down to AJ's Seagull. And you'll notice that we have a lot of the same elements, right? We've got the bird, the sand, and the water. So now I'm going to paste, okay? When you do the paste, you notice it said updating AI settings. So it takes a little bit longer to paste now, especially if you sync multiple images. Like I've selected 30 at a time when I was working on the movie set images, and it literally took like 30 seconds, okay? So you need to have some patience. So the number one thing I noticed is that it's too blue, right? So the color is off. And there's also something weird going on here, but we'll fix that with some of the masking. So this one has got camera neutral. Now, interestingly enough, okay, the camera profile applied because this is also a Nikon file, okay? So if you are doing this on your own images, of course, that will apply. And we just got lucky in this case that also AJ was using a Nikon or an NEF. So the same camera profiles were available, okay? So it applied camera neutral. If it was a different kind of image, it would have just said profile not available, and it probably would default to Adobe standard or something like that, okay? Now I'm just going to adjust the color balance because he's very blue. Okay, we're going to try the eyedropper, and I'm just going to click on the bird. Okay, that's way better, right? He looks more neutral. He's got a little bit of brown feathers, and the sand is kind of brown. I might even take it a tiny bit farther and make him a little bit warmer, and maybe take out a little bit of magenta. Something like that. Okay, so here we've gone from that to that really quickly. Now I can do things like check for blacks, and then this image, I want more. Check for whites. Okay, nothing is clipping, so I can actually take it farther. Okay, look at the contrast that's now established here. Maybe I don't even need to bring the highlights down. I don't. This one, I might actually boost the whole exposure a little bit. See how that's looking good, right? I do find it, I feel like it's crooked. So I know that the sand may be angled or diagonal, but I feel like he's crooked, okay? But let's check these masks after we do the masking. So I'm gonna mask it based on the edge of the sand. And I want to have more space again in front of him if possible. So I'm going to come in a little bit tighter. So less sand. And I might even go off the aspect ratio because the sand is taking up a third of the image. I'm actually going to do an article on this coming up here about visual mass. Because the sand is taking up a third of the image, it's really grabbing a lot of attention. So I might even go more panorama and go something tight like that. Okay. Now I still feel like it's crooked. I'm going to go based on the line in the background here. There we go. Expand that a little bit. There we go. So I based it on this line. Oops, this line here. Okay. Now let's look at what these masks are doing because there's obviously something going on weird there. Okay, so remember I did that select object to get the tail. Okay, so that's what's happening here is I just need to go and remove that object. There we go. And remove it from the background. So the 3 dots, remove it. But look at how good a job it did, right? Selecting the bird and here selecting the water and the background. So I can just simply adjust this, right? If I want all of this to be blurred, I can remove this gradient. I could literally just turn this gradient off. That's going to blur the entire background. Okay, so I might actually want to do that. But it did a really good job, and it was actually really close. Okay, so a quick copy and paste and a couple of adjustments. What did we do? Fix the color balance, the white balance, fixed a couple of things on the masks, and I think we can call it done, right? Now we're going to move to the next one, which is very similar, right? So I'm just going to hit next. When you do that and you go from one to the next, you now have another option, which is previous. So I'm just going to click previous. Again, we see it working and doing its thing. Look at that. Da, 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 da. Right? How quick was that? I might just check his crop. Even the crop is actually not bad. Look at that. Its crop is not bad at all. I might go in and do something like removing this rock. For some reason, this rock bothers me because it's grabbing attention. Remember, your eyes go to the bright things. So I'm using one of the new cloning tools, right? In the spot removal tool now, we have this content aware sort of cloning tool, and it does a really good job to remove almost anything. The other thing that I might do with these 2 images is actually do the flip, okay? If you've watched my videos before, you'll know that I tend to like to flip things sometimes because now I feel like he's flying forward, okay? When things are going to the left, my video is backwards, so I have to think about it. When things are going to the left, it feels like they're going backwards. When things are going to the right, it feels like they're going forward. And that just has to do with how we read English, okay? Left to right. Rob is in the house. If you could share the Lightroom keyboard shortcuts cheat sheet, please. Link to get that. I mentioned that earlier. So let's compare this one, okay, which is going this way. There he is. Okay, so he's going, I think, forwards to this one, which is not flipped. Which one do you prefer? Going to the left? Going to the, is that left? Going to the left or going to the right? Which bird do you prefer? This one or this one? Let's look at them together. Right? Left or right? Rob says he's got an issue. Can you remove the bread from his beak? I can take a look. Yep. I will go and take a look. You mean what he's got in his mouth? Let's take a look. AJ says the flip. So curiously, I'm curious, did you flip that one, AJ, or did you flip these? You would have been disappointed. He says, I would have been disappointed if you didn't flip it. You know me well, right? Well done. Well done. Well done. Kudos. Kudos to you for that. All right, let's take a look at the beak thing. Okay. You said you want to remove the bread. Do you mean the whole thing in his mouth? I don't think I would. I mean, I probably could, but he's missing the end of his beak, so creating the end on this one is going to be tricky. Let's see the other one. Yeah, it's going to be tricky because you don't actually have the end of his beak to use to create it, right? Let's just see what happens if I try to remove this. Yeah, see, I knew that was going to happen. Let me try that again. Okay, so I'm going to use a different tool. So when I do this, it's chosen a certain spot and it's not really removing it well. I also find that there's actually a bug in Lightroom. And somebody was getting this in my Lightroom class as well. When you do a tool like this, you notice how we've darkened the background, but look at, it's not darkening that spot. So it's like it's using the old background to clone, right? Weird, hey? Okay, so I'm going to try and use this area. I'm going to use direct copy. Yeah, see that? It should be darker, and it's not. I think we have a Lightroom bug on our hands. So in this case, I would actually have to take this to Photoshop, right? So if I wanted to do this one, I would have to take it to Photoshop. And if anybody else experiences that, I think we need to let Adobe know, hey, you guys got a problem with your cloning tools. So I agree. I think this one would flip as well. Right? So really quickly, we went from the eagle, right, to the flying birds, the seagulls, completely different camera, completely different photographer and subject. And we were able to copy and paste most of the settings and get there really close. You haven't updated since you posted about the bug. I did, yes, actually, Kelly, because my Lightroom would not even export. So the bug that I reported was that Lightroom 12, the update was, the problem was that I couldn't export. So I have updated to 12.0.1 because otherwise I couldn't solve that. So this seems to be a different bug. And I think this one's been around for a while. So maybe they aren't even aware of it. So perhaps I need to send an email to Adobe support myself. All right, let's move on to the next one. So I'm going to start with, I've actually already done one of Kelly's because we were trying to find which image to put on the thumbnail for the YouTube video, and we ended up using Danelle's. This was another one that we really liked. So I've actually already done some editing on this one. Okay, so there's the before and after, and I did all the same things. So I did the camera profile and I chose landscape because it gave it more green. I did some adjustments in here to shift the greens. So if I turn off HSL, see what that's doing. Okay, so I shifted the greens more yellow, and I also lowered the saturation and lowered the luminance, while at the same time increasing the luminance of orange, which in this case is in the ducks. Okay, so it gives them more highlights. Okay, and I did some masks as well. Okay, so we could call this birds and background. So the background again is being, the highlights are being lowered and the texture is being lowered, and the birds, I've increased the texture and the clarity. So that's all I did there. I could actually increase their exposure a little bit as well if we want to make them pop just a little bit more. See that? And I could take the background down a little darker if I want as well. Okay, so now it's really dramatic. I do believe I did an edge vignette. Yes, I did. And I did not crop. Okay, so now we're going to take the edits from this one once again, and I'm going to make sure that I have the masking. And I'm going to use all the edits this time because I did lots of stuff in here for the HSL, and I want to see about applying this to some of the other ones which have birds in the grass, okay? Like this one here of Deb's. So we've got the same kind of subject, a brown bird in the green grass. Now he's pretty camouflaged, right? And I expect the camera profile, yeah, so this one is a Canon. So the camera profile should have a problem this time. So we'll see what happens when I paste this in. Okay, so it's thinking about it. Okay, but look at what a great job it did. Okay, now even though it was a different camera, okay, it still chose camera landscape. So even though I chose camera landscape on the Canon camera, it looked for a similar one or the same name on the Nikon one. So that's kind of cool. Yeah, it still found it. But look at that, right? It really punched him up, right? Because he was really camouflaging in there. I guess this would be a she, right? Okay, so I'm going to take the bird. Now the bird's got lots of texture. I'm going to take this further and lower the sharpness of the background even more so that the bird really stands out. And then I'm just going to crop it, right? Because he's in the middle again, or she's in the middle. Right? Now keep this in mind here. As we crop now, remember there's lots of foreground here, okay? So do we want to get rid of some of the foreground and put this bird off to the third like that? So she's got some room to look over here. Okay, so now it just feels a little more balanced. I might even do a more stronger edge vignette, something like that. Or we could crop it and leave more space. Okay, so we could put her in this upper third or the lower third. In this case, it might actually feel better. Which one do you prefer? I actually kind of prefer having her up like this because with more foreground, it's almost like we're sneaking up on her, right? That she's hiding and she's sneaking up. Okay. Kelly says it's almost like she's in a little sunspot, if that makes sense. Yes, it makes total sense. Okay. Rob is asking what kind of bird that is. I believe that's a grouse. Correct me if I'm wrong, Kelly. Now this little spot right here is still bright, so I might go in and just do a little more editing here. So I'm just going to brush it in because I want to add some more darkness and lower the highlights. And I'm just going to like brush in with about 50%. Oh, that's too much. Now, the neat thing about when you're doing this brush in, if I lower the density of the mask or the brush, look, it sort of erases it, right? Because I'm brushing in. Right? Look at this little flower over there. It's actually kind of cool. I want to get this dandelion. I might even go in and try and remove the dandelion because it's kind of obtrusive. And when I'm looking at it, remember I talk about little things, right? Like what's grabbing your attention. So there's another little white flower down here. And I'm just going to, it looks like I copied that as well. So I'm going to delete that one. Oops. You know what? I'm going to reset this because I've got cloning stuff happening all over the place. Because I forgot that I did a lot of cloning on the ducks. Okay, so remember if you copy and paste, don't copy the cloning. Okay? I'm just going to get rid of some of these bright spots here. Even this one back here, it's kind of red. I don't like the red because it's drawing attention. Remember, warm colors project, right? And I'm just going to get rid of all of the bright areas. Okay, so see what that's doing? Do you see the difference? It's these little things, right, that grab your attention. Do you see that? These little things. I kind of like this little flower though, because it's really it's kind of balancing the image, right? Like I said, I'm going to do an article on balance. Now this one here, I may not remove it completely. Yeah, it's not doing the perfect job, but I'm just going to use this to darken it. Okay, so I'm using the stamp tool and I'm just going to lower the opacity. Okay, so I'm just darkening it. I'm just choosing a site over here, a section or an area that's dark. Okay. Okay, looking at it again. Now I'm still seeing this one is bugging me. Right. Remember to look at your image upside down if you can't figure out what to edit. Right. I mean, for some reason it takes a long time to load it. So is there anything that's grabbing your attention other than the bird and the little flower? It's almost like she's looking at the flower now, right? I don't see anything distracting. So I think that's a good edit. Okay, once again, we quickly went from the ducks, copy and paste, over to the next one. So I'm going to copy again, and this time I'm going to remember to turn off the healing tool. So generally, I almost never copy and paste healing or crop from one to the other, and don't put those into your presets as well. Okay. AJ said, can you explain what you did to the dandelion on the bird? Yes. Okay, so what I did here, let me get in here. So I used the spot removal tool, and then you have three choices when you get into the spot removal tool. You have this new content aware fill one, the healing tool, which is the band-aid, and then the pure clone and stamp. So most of these, I used the automated one, okay, so the content aware, but on this one, I used the stamp, okay, and I used it at a lower opacity, okay, because if I stamp at 100%, it copies exactly what's up here in the source area over to the target area, okay. Like if I put this on the bird's face, we'll have two of the bird's face. Can you see his eyeball there? Keep calling him a him. Okay, see the beak? Okay, so it copies exactly wherever my mouse is going. Okay, so that's why I had it in the dark area and I lowered the opacity, okay, because all I wanted to do was minimize the dandelion. Okay, so if I turn off or hide all the cloning tools, watch the dandelion. So it's just darkening it. That's all it's doing. Okay. I have a video on the cloning tool for Lightroom. Rob, if you could please share that for AJ, that would be great. Are you available to do that, Rob? Ruffed grouse. Yes. There you go. Ruffed grouse. I knew it was a grouse. I did do an eagle. Yes. It was the bald eagle and a seagull and ducks. And now we have a grouse. Danelle says, now I like the small flower on the right. As you say, it adds balance, even though the size is very different. Exactly. And it just almost like there's something there for the bird to add a little bit of interest, right? The dandelions I can live without. Okay, so remember I did copy, right? So now I'm going to move over again to another one here. And this one is Marty's. But again, it's the same kind of idea. Right? Birds against a green background. So I'm going to paste, and I copied everything except cloning and healing and cropping. Okay. Now this one's gone a little bit yellow, so I'm going to adjust the color because he should be not so yellow. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe this is a Sandhill Crane. Could be a whooping crane, but it's a crane of some kind. Look at the stocky legs. Okay. Now, the one thing I wish is that I could see his little feet, or big feet, as it were. But I'm going to crop in on this side here because there's a lot of space. Again, look at, there's a third of the image that doesn't have anything, and there's nothing to balance it, okay? Now, if I keep the original aspect ratio, I'm either going to get less of his leg, so I'm either going to lose some of mom's, I'm assuming that's mom, neck, or I'm going to lose some of his legs. So I'm actually just going to go off aspect ratio and come in tighter on this side, right? Because I want to have, now see what happens if I go there. Mom's eye is almost on this intersection of the thirds as well as the baby, okay? So now we have this balance between them, right? Let's see if I come up a little bit more. There we go. That's not bad, right? But look what's happening, right? I'm going to check the mask because it looks like maybe I've got a little bit of the grass in this one here. Yeah, it's got a little bit of the grass because it had a hard time distinguishing what was the bird and what was the grass, but it did pretty good. So I'm just going to do a subtract and use the brush. And I'm just going to paint it out. And I'm going to turn the mask overlay off because I want to actually see what's happening. See that? Let's go a little bit more. There we go. Now I'm going to have to do the same thing probably on the background. So this time I need to add with the brush and just paint that area in. Okay. There's probably a little area in here that got missed as well, but that looks pretty good. And it's also missed a bit of her beak down in the grass here. Right? So I could go back to the birds and I'm just refining the mask, right? Actually, let me change this to red. So when I have the mask as green, it's hard to tell if it's over the grass or not because the grass is green. That's easier. That's better, right? So I could take this one farther with the brush here. And I also want to add in mom's beak. So I'm just going to get a nice small brush and just make sure I've got the tip of her beak here. Okay. But again, pretty good edit right off the bat, okay? I could go in and check this HSL and maybe shift the greens even more yellow. See if I shift that, it's changing the green. And I'm going to lower the saturation a bit more and the luminance. Okay, now this one has got the yellow lowered, but you notice that there's yellow in the bird as well. So you have to be careful about HSL and making sure it's not getting your subject. Okay. Look at that. Okay, the bird is still orange. So all these brown birds have the same thing, right? I can brighten the color on her head. Give her a little bit brighter head. See that? Look what HSL is doing. Okay, so that's before and after. All right. So that looks pretty good. All right. Let's see. Are there any others on the grass? Oh, yes. Okay. So I was going to try this one on James' image of the butterfly. Okay. So it's not a bird, but close enough. It's a thing that flies. So let's do the same paste on this one. Whew. Look at. Fantastic. Do I even need to do anything? Maybe a crop. Look at that. Okay. So this is so great. I might save this as a preset. Okay. So if I'm a person that does lots of bird photos, save this as a preset because seriously, this works great. So I save the eagle. I'm going to save it called Bird in Grass. Okay. So this one specifically, remember, I don't want to do cropping and healing. And let's just check here. Okay, so you notice that it doesn't allow me to even select those things when I'm doing a preset. Okay, so I can't put cropping and healing in a preset. So I'm going to call it Birds in the Grass, right? Because that's a great one. And then I'm just going to do a little crop because once again, the butterfly's in the middle. Now, do we want to, I'm going to come in tighter. And then we have a decision to make, okay? Do we want to have more space on this side? Or do we want to keep the white flowers? This one has this kind of leaning into the image. I'm thinking I might do this and then flip it, right? So that's kind of nice. Or we can leave more space this way. I kind of like this one better, right? Because it leads you up to the butterfly, right? The white flowers are actually pretty well contained and well controlled with this here, with this background adjustment. Actually, is it even selecting the white flowers? Aha. So if you're not sure, look it missed that white flower. So I am going to go to the birds and do a subtract. And I want to try object. Okay, I'm just going to paint over this flower. You can paint over it as well. Or yeah, there we go. Okay, so I'm going to select it there. And then I'm going to add it to the background. Select object. Because it wasn't darkening that one particular flower. Right? There we go. That's better. Now, if this one is still too bright and this one down in the bottom corner is really taking my attention, I can do that same trick, AJ. Okay, so I'm going to use the cloning tool, stamp. I could use actually stamp or heal. Actually, I could use any of them set to 50%, but I'm just going to go over that corner, okay? And then with the stamp tool, though, I have control of where I place the source as well as the healing. Okay, so now I set it to 50% opacity. The stronger I go, the more it gets rid of that flower, okay? If I switch it to healing, let's see what happens. Not much. If I switch it to this one, which is refresh, okay? So about the same. Content aware. So either one of these would do the job here. I just like to use the stamp tool because I can control how much of it I remove. Okay. This one here, I think I will get rid of completely. Oops, apparently I didn't get all of it. Got to make sure you have a big enough painting around it. There we go. And then this one here, I want to darken as well. So I'm going to select it and then lower the opacity. Now this is the content aware fill one, and you can see it's doing the same thing. So anytime you use the lower the opacity, you'll just adjust the tones, but not remove it completely. Okay. This one kind of bugs me because it's right next to the butterfly, right? Let's just see what happens if I take it up. Getting close to the butterfly is tricky, right? I would have to come in. I'm going to zoom in and get closer to do that. Because as soon as you touch his wing, right, you end up with a problem area. So that's better, right? And then I might just go in and do another smaller one, right? Painting in here like that. So if I go over the flower, let's just see what happens. That's not bad. There we go. And then these ones over here, I could do the same, or I could just add another mask, right? If I add a radial or a linear mask, either one, and just come over the edge like this and just lower the highlights. Okay? So see how that's getting those white flowers. Go. But we've quickly taken that image and brought the butterfly out as well. Okay, and all of those factors are coming into play. If we turn off the HSL panel, right, see it's doing the same thing. And look at how brightening the oranges, right, brings out that butterfly. Look at that. Now this one has purple flowers, so we could even bring the purple flowers out or darken them a little bit. Now notice darkening, remember? Color saturation. Perfect example. Look at bright, they look like lavender. Dark, purple. Okay. So I'm going to darken them a little bit. See that? Beautiful. Nice image. Nice image, James. All of these are great images. Okay. What a difference in the butterfly photo. See, it's really dramatic when I do a copy and paste, right? So when I do a copy and paste and it goes boom, right? I like doing this copy and paste thing. Now we've got one more to copy and paste, right? So initially I started with Kelly's ducks. And now I'm just going to go to the next duck. And in this one, I'm just going to hit previous. Okay, so because I went from the other ducks to this one, it will recognize that it was the previous image. Okay, and look at that, pretty close. Again, there's a lot of foreground here, so it feels like they're really far away. Okay, I'm going to take away some of the foreground and put them in the corner like that. So they've got room to sort of move into that background. And I might add another linear gradient here to darken this foreground even more. Okay, so I do edge darkening like this a lot. Okay, look at the difference. And if you want to, remember, if you want to darken, do exposure and blacks. Okay. Look at that. And that kind of looks like they're on a hill now, right? I think I might even add the same thing up here, because this bright area is too bright. And while I'm here, I could lower the texture and the sharpness and then create even more shallow depth of field. I want to check these. Okay, we got a lot of clipping. We've got that. I'm going to brighten it overall a little bit. So I'm just checking that nothing is clipping off the charts. Could probably scale the blacks back just a little bit. Like so. And a vignette. There we go. So quickly, using one duck image, I was able to process all 5 of those with very similar settings. Can you see how that works? Okay, so that's why I grouped them like this. Okay. The intruder. Who was the intruder? Oh, yes, I see the intruder. All right, let's move on. So the next one I want to look at, let's see. I'm going to skip down to these ones of Danelle's that I did and Brandon's, because these ones here have a simple background, right? So I don't have to do a lot of sort of manipulating to the background, but I'm going to reset these because I want to show you what I did here. So this is the finished image, and that's the before, right? So all I did really was punch up the bird a little bit. I think I might have cropped in. Yeah, I cropped in, right? So I cropped in to make it like he was more flying that way, okay? So let me just reset, right? So see how he's kind of flying up that way? Rob wanted him flying straight, so that's why I cropped it, because it fit with the thumbnail that he was doing. But in this case, I don't mind the cropping that, like the direction that he's flying. I personally kind of like it. But let's put him there in this power spot and just get rid of some of the negative space. So negative space is good. I just don't want quite so much, okay? So now he's got space to go up, right? If we want him angling more up, we can just do that, okay? Like so. So he's taken off, okay? And now we'll do the same process, okay? Landscape, look at that. Landscape does wonders on the sky. So we're going to do that. Portrait. I actually waffled between portrait and landscape because the landscape actually brought the pink of him out better than portrait did, which I was surprised. Okay, now with a sky image like this, right, I want to see the exposure setting. So this is F16, 1600, ISO 1600, F9. And a 5,000th of a second. So she's used those settings because she wanted to make sure you got the bird sharp. One thing I would suggest now is for bird photography, especially flying like this, open up the aperture, right? With this lens, you can go up to 5.6 or 6.3 here. Open up your aperture to 5.6 if you can. Especially when you zoom in like that, you want the fastest shutter speed possible, right? So if you switch from F9 to roughly F6, you get about a stop more shutter speed, okay? So you'd end up with either a faster shutter speed, in which, in this case, you've done pretty well, but you could also lower your ISO. Okay, so you'd end up with 800 ISO instead of 16. So open your aperture when you're dealing with fast moving subjects like that. Okay. All right, now I want to do the same thing that I did before. So let's do the shift, double click. You know, you notice that it moved white to the left, right? So it lowered the whites. I'm actually going to leave the whites where they were at 0. And instead, I'm going to either adjust exposure. I don't even see anything clipping, or the highlights, because he looks pretty good. Okay, if we lift the shadows, we get more pink in him, okay? But I don't mind the contrast. Like, you need to have some shadows and highlights, and I like the difference in the wings. So if I'm going to do that, I'm going to do it ever so gently, like 6 plus 6, and then darken him a little bit. Okay, now we can go to HSL, but I'm not going to touch clarity here, okay? I'm not going to touch clarity. Okay, because what I want to do is I want to do subject, and it does, obviously it selected the bird really well, and I'm going to add texture just to him, okay, and clarity just to him. Again, I'm assuming it's a him, could be a her. Actually, I don't know, what color are the females? Okay, name it. Okay, so can you see what that's doing? So when I add the texture and the clarity, it actually added some more shadows in here. So now I could just lift the shadows a little bit on the feathers. Okay. Highlights is affecting, see, the highlights is affecting this part too. And I don't want to do that. I like the highlights on the bottom feathers here. So if anything, I would do another selection just on this wing, because I don't want to lower the highlights. Watch what happens to the bottom wing when I lower the highlights, okay? He's kind of got this beautiful outline around him from the sun. And when I do that, it removes all the backlighting on these feathers. Okay, so I don't want to do that. But I'm adding the texture and the clarity to him, because you don't want to do that to the sky, especially when you have an image shot at a higher ISO. Okay, so I'm going to close this, and then I'm going to show you what happens, and I'm going to take it all the way. Okay, see what happens if I add texture and clarity, right? I'm not even at 100% yet, but look at the sky. Can you see the sky? Look at it. That's why I don't do texture and clarity overall. So if I reset those, okay, there is a bit of grain in the sky already, and I'm going to do some denoise on this as well. Okay. He's a little bit unsharp. Oh, and you know what? I'm not paying attention to, she wants this one in Luminar. So I should be doing this one in Luminar. So you know what? I'm just going to hop over here and pick up where I left off here. Okay, so one change I noticed when I updated Luminar today is they've now put the extensions puzzle piece over here as opposed to next to the logo. Okay, so I'm just going to catch up real quickly here as to what I just did in Lightroom, and I'm going to do the same over here. Whoa, that's a crazy color. Let's see, what did I say? Portrait was more color. Wow, that's crazy blue. Okay, so that I'm going to actually have to underdo the blue on that. So I really don't want to go that crazy. So in this case, I'm going to start with portrait. It's interesting that the preset did something different than it did in Lightroom. Okay, so I'm going to do the darken. I feel the color is a little bit off here, so that's a little better blue. That could be the challenge there. That could be why the profile. So notice that the landscape profile went crazy blue, but watch what happens when I shift this, right? When I shift the color temperature, right, stuff goes crazy. When I go more towards the blue, the sky goes like neon. But when I get into the proper color range where it should be, the sky falls back in line. Okay, so now we can actually probably use this one. All right, so now I'm just checking the clippings. So the bird's feathers are clipping a little bit. I'm going to bring that down. You know, we don't have the same option here in terms of selecting the bird. There isn't a select subject in Luminar, right? But we do have select sky. So we can do the opposite. Okay, so let me just get these things done in here. Of course, I'm going to do chromatic aberration. And we can also try the new Sharpen AI in here because he's a little bit not quite sharp. Let's do the crop. Let's see what Luminar thinks. Right, so like tilted. So he's flying more upwards. Did I come in a little bit more? I want to get him down there. There we go. So he's flying up. Okay. Now we want to adjust the bird, and I want to give him more detail and structure, right? So I'm going to start with detail, and I'm going to zoom in so we can see him. So I want to bring some detail onto the bird. So I'm going to go medium details. Let's just take these up high, right? So I'm going to take these up high so you can see what's happening. And that, even that sharpens him up, right? But again, we get that sharpness in the sky and it makes noise, right? So I'm just leaving these up high so that you can see what's happening. And then we're going to mask it. Okay, so I'm going to use Mask AI. And I'm going to use sky. So as soon as it finishes its thing, I should be able to select the sky and then just simply invert it. Okay, let me see. The brilliant color was what I liked about that day. Yeah, totally, Danelle. And this pink bird, like, great capture. Absolutely great capture. Getting birds flying is really hard, right? So you've done a really great job. So I've selected the sky. It's pretty close. And then I'm just inverting it. Okay, so now you can see that I'm just adding these details to the bird. Okay? And I'm not going to go so far, obviously. Okay, so I'm going to bring that down. Okay, so it's a bit subtle. Okay, and while I'm here, I'm actually going to do a copy. Okay, so I copied the mask. And let's try the new Supersharp. So let's try middle. Okay, so now this one can be masked as well, right? And Rob is asking you to give us a thumbs up if you haven't already. So thank you if you have done that. Danelle says, I use DxO Prime Sharpen on all of my Virgin Raw images. No processing at all until after it is done. Be careful of that, Danelle, because you almost want to do sharpening last. That's generally the last step that people do. So you might want to consider doing that last, not first. Try it both ways and see which comes out. Can we now cut out the bird as a smart object on another image? Or do we have to do that as a layer? Yes, we can cut him out. Yes, we can. As soon as sharpen is done. See, this extension, I shouldn't have run it on a raw file. The sharpen does take a while to run, but if you've ever used Topaz Sharpen, it takes just as long. Let's see. Whooping cranes. Yes, we were. Did we determine what kind of crane it was? Do we know? Clone tips. Yes, I wanted you to share the clone videos for AJ, the cloning tips. DxO does sharpening and noise reduction at the same time in the beginning. Interesting. So then do you take it from there to Luminar to know? Okay, so this is what it's come up with in terms of sharpening. So look at the bird. Wow, he is definitely sharper. See that? Maybe a little too far, so we might want to go with low, but I'm going to apply the mask here. So I'm going to paste the mask in, so I'm not sharpening the sky again, okay? But look what's happening before and after. It does a really good job. Okay, I wish there was a slider as opposed to these buttons that allowed me to sort of adjust it a little better. This may be something that they add in the future. And once you've done one of these buttons, it should go faster the next time, right? So it should go faster. Sandhill Crane. Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah, just confirming. The whooping cranes, I know they both have red around their eye, but what is the difference between them? Okay. While this is doing its thing, I'm actually going to pop back over here to Lightroom because I wanted to show this image of Brandon's that I've already edited as well. We haven't seen Brandon. Oh, is he here today? Yeah, he was here earlier. Brandon, are you still here? So this was one I edited earlier. We were going to use this as a featured image, and I think Rob did use it in one place. So this is the original, and really all I did was the same thing as what I've done on the other ones on the grass. And because the water has all the reflections of the grass, you could probably use that same preset. As a matter of fact, I'm going to make a virtual copy. So I use Command apostrophe. I'm going to reset this. You can see that I did crop it, right? And I'm going to use birds in the grass. Okay, now see how it's grayed out on my presets? Okay, that is because it does not have the camera profile. It's not finding the camera profile. Okay, so I can just go and pick one that does camera match, okay? And then I can adjust from here, okay? So obviously there's too much white. I don't need to bring the shadows up. And this image was a little bit overly too bright. And it looks like I've gone too far on this one, okay? So I just need to adjust for this image. There we go. Right? So again, that same preset and a few adjustments, right, went from, so I got to go back here to my history to reset the before. Okay, so if that happens, you make a preset or you make a virtual copy. So now when I hit the backslash key, right, the before is showing me the edited version. So I can right click on the version in the history that I want to use as my before settings. So that's the reset one. Okay, so now that's before and after. Okay, so let's compare these two. Right, the one on the left is the one I did before, and this is the one that I just did with the preset. Now, obviously, I cropped in and I went farther with this one, but this one, pretty good, right? From what? 2 clicks. 2 clicks and a couple of little adjustments. So I'll show you what I did in this one. I did use clarity, and I think I saturated. No, I didn't, but I could. Okay, so we could actually go in here and adjust the oranges. Right? Look at what happens here. Orange brings out his beak. See that? Look at that. Orange brings out his beak. Okay. And let's see what I did on the mask. So on the duck, I added lots of texture. And on the background, I took the highlights down. Aha. I took the blacks down. Remember color? Look at that. The further I take the black, look at the color. Right? Now, if I wanted to go and darken this top part, right, all I would have to do is add another linear gradient from the top. Right? And then just darken it again. Like so. So I want the edge of the image to be darker. That's all. There we go. So now that's kind of cool, right? So before and after. I could crop this one the same, but this one, if I change the background to add more black, watch what happens. We basically get to the same point. Okay? And I just need a crop. This one, I wanted to make sure to leave the trail behind him a little bit. Okay? So pretty similar, right? A little more color here. Okay, let's go back to Luminar, see if that's done sharpening. It is. So let's do a before and after. So I think that sharpening has done a really good job on the bird. Okay. Now I want to do some denoise, and we have noiseless. Okay. Again, we have the same thing, low, middle, high. I'm going to try low, and keep in mind that these are all AI tools. So they have to run in the background to analyze the image, and the bigger the file you have, especially if it's a raw file, the longer that it's going to take to run. Okay. So this is what I've gotten for noise reduction. I'm going to take it a little bit farther. Let's go medium. Okay, that looks pretty good. So we want to make sure, I don't know why it zoomed me into 200%, but we want to make sure that we don't go too far and start to make him look blurry. But that's what the noiseless extension does versus the denoise version down here. Okay, it maintains more detail. Okay, so I'm just going to go with that. And lastly, I want to go with color, but I might try actually color harmony on this one. Okay, and one of my favorite sliders, color contrast, because if we can bring the bird out even more, right? So we can darken the sky. Look at that. Maybe not quite so much. And adjust the blues a little bit. Okay, so I'm adding a little bit of purple to the sky because it's going a bit neon for my taste. Like so. Okay. And the one that I had in mind was color because I want to go in here and lower the luminance of the bird only on that second wing. So now look at this wing is red. And I have a feeling that this one, no. What color is that? It's not picking up any colors. Interesting. Okay, so this one is so bright that it's not picking up any colors. So what I'm going to do is go to super contrast and work on the highlights. Okay, so there's a few different ways to work on the highlights. So you can do that in Develop. Right, look what a great job this does on this wing. Okay, so keep in mind, I just want it on this wing and possibly his head. Okay, so darken, lighten, play with the sliders, go all the way, see what they do. Right, so I'm going to go to extremes, and then I'm just going to paint it in this case. Actually, I'll start with pasting the mask because I don't want it on the sky. And then, actually, that looks pretty good. Look at it. That looks pretty good. I'm actually just going to erase it from this bottom part. Right? Because remember I said I don't want it on these feathers here. And so I want the highlights on these bottom feathers to continue to show. Maybe even his head. See how that's doing a nice job on the top wing? So I've just erased it from there. Look at the detail on the wing there. Okay. So there's the before and after. Okay, so really I'm just picking up detail, sharpening him, cropping him. Okay, now Holly wanted to cut him out. Okay, so if we go to layer properties, okay, and masking and background removal AI, I'm going to be doing a video on this as well. So I'm going to be showing you how to use this, and I'll do a full demonstration. Okay. And I don't think I'm going to get to the last part of the birds that I wanted to get to today. Now, look what a great selection it made. This should be an easy one, right? It's a pretty well-defined subject, right? He's got contrast. He's got color contrast. So it should do a pretty good job to cut him out, okay? So there he is. Now, to refine it, okay, this is where it comes in, the tricky part, okay? So can you see the blue in the wings here? So what you need to do is go to the refinements brush, and this is where you want to use the transition tool, okay, the transition brush. So what I do is anything that is transparent, you want to sort of go around the edge so it can find the edges better. Do you see how it got rid of a lot of that blue? Okay. So what you're doing here is you're training the AI. You're helping it to find the edges. Because there's also a little bit of sky in between his feet here. And I find that there's a little bit of sky in between his toes. So see how when it just does its thing and it sort of pops into place, there's a little bit around the edge here. So using the transition tool or the transition brush, right, you want to have it overlapping the subject and the background, okay? So see what a good job that's doing. It missed a little spot in here. I'm just going to go in there again. And I missed a little spot in here. That looks pretty good. Okay, now if we think we've got it good, before I go back to properties, what I want to do is just close the refinement brush and look for any bits that need to be refined. It's still got a little bit of blue all the way around the edge, and you'll notice that there's blue showing through these feathers. So I might actually just run these whole feathers through this transition brush right there. Right? So basically what I'm telling it is, look, these are partly transparent, right? No, I probably went too far. Let's just go back. There we go. Okay, so now it's made the feathers a bit more transparent. You see that? I would do a little bit more work around his head, right? But if we want to use this on another image, all you need to do is save it. Okay, so you just need to export him. I'm just going to put him in my downloads for now. And you need to export him as a PNG. This is the key. You must export as a PNG and make sure that it says save as transparency. Okay, so I'm going to save him as a PNG. I'm just going to put him in my downloads folder so I can find him. And then we can put him onto another image. Okay, put him on the photo with the seagull. Okay, let's see. Which one? No, I don't have enough sky. I don't know if I have. Let's see, where can we put him? Where can we put him? We need an image that's got some sky. I could put him flying over San Francisco. Sorry, let's put him over San Francisco. Okay, so we just add him as a layer. Now this one, I know that I've done some wacky stuff here with face light, so I'm just going to dial this down. Luminar has to catch up to me. There we go. And I know that I went crazy with mystical on this one. So now we just need to add a layer, load the image. And where is he? There he is. Okay, so you can actually see the background looks white here. Okay, but when we add him, and if we're putting him into another image that has sky, right, it should blend, right? If he's got blue behind his feathers and he goes into the sky, he should blend anyways. Okay, so I'm adding him. I don't know, where the heck is he? Where is he? He should be right there. Oh, he's hiding. There he is. It won't let me move it. He's there, but it just needs to catch up. Okay, I'm going to come back and let Luminar catch up again and see if there's any other questions. How about flying an airplane? Well, I fear for his life then. See? Rob is promising things that I have to deliver now, possibly a new background removal video on Monday or Tuesday, and of course I will add them to the course soon as well. So the only thing I wanted to finish up with here in the Lightroom was we didn't get to these contrasty ones. I'm going to save these for another show. All right, so these will come up again, either under birds if I do birds again, or just high contrast or images with high contrast that need to be solved. Okay. If you aren't using Luminar like Linton or Trish, pulling this one through the HDR merge extension actually might work really well to minimize some of that contrast. Oh, there he is. I knew we were just waiting for him. Okay, so I'm going to make him smaller. He's a little big. And let's flip him so he's going this way. He's flying to the Golden Gate Bridge. Do you see what I mean? If I put him up in the blue, right, it matches better, right, than if he's in the white. So if this was a pure blue sky, I could also fade him out a little bit so he's not quite so contrasty. Make him a ghost bird. Or we can then go and lower the contrast on him or de-sharpen him as this layer. So there we go. So there he is flying over San Francisco Bay. Let me just grab my reminder here. If you don't already have our Lightroom course, we have Lightroom for photographers available and Luminar Neo, the complete course. Rob, if you could put some links to our courses, please. Maybe just our main course page. We've got courses on Lightroom, Photoshop, and Luminar Neo that are Luminar Neo is being updated with the new things as they come out with new extensions. I'm trying my best to keep up with the videos in the course, and the course will always be updated. So you'll always have the new things. And then Rob is reminding me about themes. Let me just change to this other picture here because I've got the reminder of how to submit your photos. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be adding themes. What themes do we want to give them? Let's do a winter. Okay, we want some winter scenes. We talked about a lot of different things. Do you have that list for me, Rob? Maybe send it to me privately. I know we talked about that on Slack. We're going to be doing themes each week because I think these work well with similar kinds of images, right? So we've gone back to working with Lightroom and Photoshop and Luminar together in the same live stream, but now we're going to be doing themes. I still have some water photos. So if you've got some more photos with water, whether that be ocean, streams, lakes, whatever, I'm going to show you the one that we do have that we're going to be using next week. That was a fantastic image sent in by Zay. So Zay, you are here today, are you not? That is a fantastic image. Oh, I love it. Okay, so this is what I did with it. Let me show you the before and after. And next week, I'm going to show you how I did this. Okay, so there's the before and there's the after. Here, let me just get rid of all these stuff. Okay, so before and after. Wow, image, right? Yeah. So I'm going to show you how to deal with images of water next week. We want those coming. And what else do we want? Winter. Let's see. Yeah, snow and ice. Okay, so this one fits in with both. Okay, so 4 different forms of water here: snow and ice. And coming up soon, we'll have Christmas and so on. But I'd love also trees and forest. So let's focus on water, snow and ice, and trees and forest. Okay, if you don't have any of those things, get out and shoot one. Get out and take one. So I'd love to have those things. Let me just get back to the link. There we go, as a reminder. And where are we? That's it. Yes, photo credit will be in the image. And I wanted to also remind you the reason I'm wearing red today and the background is red is because, of course, it's Remembrance Weekend here in Canada. And I believe it's called Veterans Day in the US. Correct me if I'm wrong. So wearing red, we wear poppies here in Canada, which symbolizes the poppy fields and remembrance. That's kind of our symbol. So I'm wearing the red today in remembrance of our veterans. So thank you for your service if you are a veteran. Danelle says, yes, November 11th. Yes, it was yesterday. So awesome. So again, thank you for joining us. Next week, we'll be back doing some water photos. Send those in. Holly, oh, thank you. Thank your husband for his service. Well, for your country. But thank you. Thank you for your service. Yes, Flanders Fields, exactly, the poppies. Okay. Take care, everyone. Have a great week. Actually, we will not be back next week because I am teaching a workshop. I just forgot, Rob. So we will not be back next week. We have to skip a week because I'm teaching a model workshop next week. I'm working with youth and showing them how to be in front of a camera for photographers. I'm working with 2 wonderful Indigenous ladies to put on a workshop next week. So 2 weeks from today, we will be back with water. So you've got lots of time to go out and take some photos for submission for the next one. Take care, and we'll see you soon.